Okay.
Welcome, everybody. This is the 5th installment in the UDT-SEAL Association Caliber Home Loans Financial Wellness Series. Tonight, the topic is something that's near and dear to me. It's about making the right financial decisions. Something that I have, over the years, had a few challenges with. So I am going to be listening rapidly to this because I'm sure that there's still some decisions that I need to make in the coming years, so I don't fall over myself like I've done in the past. So what can I say? So I'm going to pass it off to Michelle. Michelle, it's all yours.
Thanks, Gary. So what I'm hearing is you're human.
Very much. Very, very, very human. And all you got to do is ask my kids and my wife. They'll tell you all about it.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm so excited. Again, we are 5. This is the 5th out of the 12. Can't believe that we are approaching the halfway mark of the year already. And while we have talked about a lot of things in the past, from the VA loan specifically to income, to credit, to some wealth building and some real estate information, we are going to move a little bit away from the financing. It wouldn't be, a financing seminar if I didn't talk about it just a little bit, but we're going to spend a lot of time this evening talking about some of the things when it comes to purchasing that I think is going to be extremely helpful, and that as individuals will help you as you're making some of those decisions. So let me share my screen real quick as we kind of hop in here, and that should do it. Just give me a thumbs up that you are seeing the PowerPoint. Perfect. Okay, so today we're going to talk about kind of the ins and outs of purchasing, and again, to give you an idea of what we are talking about there. We're going to be moving through really some of those purchasing considerations, really identifying, and actually this has moved way farther ahead than I anticipated it, but we're going to be talking about not only when you should be purchasing, and some of those things to think about from occupancy as well as from the standpoint of what you can afford and whether there's going to be a down payment. We're going to go through those really quick. And then we're going to get into some of the information regarding specifically, wonder why that jumped ahead on me, specifically around the property standards and considerations, a home buyer's mindset. We're going to talk about condominiums versus single family, strategies for winning the offer, powers of attorney, specific versus general. Great conversation, and will absolutely derail a loan, as well as kind of that real estate specific powers of attorney when you're purchasing, selling, or when you're refinancing. So with that, knowing that these are the things that we are going to be chatting about, I wanted to take a moment to have everybody really quick introduce themselves. So tonight, Ben and I have been with you now for 5 weeks straight. You've gotten to hear a little bit about what we're passionate about, my experience, one as a military spouse, as well as in the industry for 20 plus years now. You've got to hear from Ben about not only his military background, but his industry experience too. And I wanted to give a little bit more time this evening to Jacinth and Julie that are with us. So let me move through this to Jacinth. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much for having me again. It's nice to be here with everybody. So I am French Canadian, originally from Quebec, Canada, and then I moved to the United States in 1994. Spent most of my life on the East Coast in Virginia Beach, where I still have a property there that we're renting now. And met my husband, who's a retired SEAL, spent more than 26 years in the Navy serving our country. He's retired now, but now works in Coronado. We made the move 2 years ago to to the West Coast. So there was the whole thing about, do you rent, do you sell, you're looking for a new place, the kids in tow and all that. So firsthand experience with all of that. So I spent most of my career doing marketing and public relations on the East Coast and in Canada. And now I've been doing real estate for almost 2 years right now. And I absolutely love helping people move to the next chapter of their lives. It's exciting, it's stressful, it's emotional, it's all of the above. So, and it's an honor to be part of that process and try to make this as simple and easy as possible in this really very heated, crazy real estate market that we're in right now. So I'm excited to be here, and we'll share some tips, on how to go about winning an offer today and with the big competition that we have out there.
And it couldn't be any more timely, because I know there are a bunch of us that are pulling our hair out going, how do you get anything right now accomplished, and what do you need to know and how to prepare? So I love that. That is awesome. And then Miss Julie joining us for the very first time. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Good afternoon, and thank you again for inviting me to join in. It's an honor to speak to the SEAL community. Again, my name is Julia Vasco. I am a lifetime resident of the Tidewater area. I was actually born in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. So that tells you I am a Navy brat. Stepfather, 30 years in the Navy as a chief. My father was a 20-year Navy, retired out of Dam Neck as a gunner's mate. So he had some affiliation with this community. I went to law school late after my kids started school and had a passion for real estate. And so I've worked real estate from the front desk at a law firm all the way through going in and getting my law degree. And my practice focuses on real estate. And for the most part, we always handle those difficult ones. And whenever we have a military member, we always want to make sure that if they're here or abroad or underway or just unavailable for whatever reason, that we make sure that we protect them and their family for what's likely one of the biggest assets they're going to buy in their lifetime. Again, thank you for inviting me and looking forward to this discussion. Thank you, Michelle.
I'll tell you what, we couldn't, this industry could not do it without individuals like yourself that absolutely makes sure that the I's are dotted, T's are crossed, everything's in line when we get that opportunity to say congratulations on your new home. So thank you for everything you do, and very much looking forward to hearing about some of the snafus that happen when we talk about the whole component around powers of attorney and not physically being there. So I know we've even got a current story that we're going to be able to share this evening.
And I even have a little add to that as well. So.
Absolutely. So on the financing side, because we kind of thought that we'd set this up talking about a little bit, just a smidge about the financing component when you're thinking about purchasing, and then really spend the bulk of the time this evening on what from the real estate aspect and the closing, especially when you're not there, that we need to keep front and center in our minds. So when we talk about the financing side, and Ben, feel free to hop in here, it's important that we think about the two main things outside of what we've already talked about, right? We've talked about income, we've talked about credit, but how are you going to use this property? What is the occupancy that you are going to either want to or have to call that property? Because they sometimes aren't the same thing. Is it going to be your primary residence? Can it really be called your primary residence? Is it going to be a second or vacation home? Or do we need to really look at this as an investment property? Would you say that's true, Ben?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, occupancy is like front and center of one of my first questions for sure. Why are we buying this house?
And as we then talk through, that's going to tell us, first of all, what type of occupancy is going to define for us what kind of loan types we can even talk about. Because there are some loan programs that only work if it is a primary residence. There are other loan programs that may come into play if we're talking about a second home or an investment property. So the type of occupancy will drive the loan options that are available. And those loan options will then define what kind of down payment do you have to have? VA, primary residence, potentially zero. In most situations, you don't have to make a down payment. If it's an investment property, you might be required to make 20, even 25 or 30% down payment on an investment property, depending on the loan product that you're looking at. They will also define whether you have to have those cash reserves. So after you've made your down payment, after you've paid your closing costs, you may still be required to show that you have assets for a certain amount over and above what that monthly payment is. The loan program's also going to dictate debt to income ratios. How much money do you have coming in the front door versus how much money do you have going out the back? Some may allow a debt to income ratio as high as 50, maybe even 60%. So you can afford more on less. And you might find that you are held to a 38 or 42% debt to income ratio. So that loan program is going to be extremely important in dictating those parameters. Anything you'd want to add to that, Ben?
No, I mean, no, you covered it perfectly. I'll get there. Very clear. Yeah.
Wonderful. And then moving to why it's then so important as we start to hand you off to just then really plan ahead, know what you are qualified for. What is your occupancy going to be? What's the loan type? What's the terms, the payment? What does the rate look like? All of those things, because what you don't want to do is end up halfway down a path and realize either you can't do what you wanted or you can't do it at all. Places that you, the real estate agent, and your lender do not want you. So really making sure that you're doing some of that homework up front will be extremely helpful. Then when you are ready to start looking at those homes and negotiating and creating those offers.
Yeah, because look, I've had situations where somebody is out actively qualified buying an investment property, and then they come to me and, hey, we made an offer on a place, and okay, great. So I go look up the property and it's a duplex. Well, that can change the down payment requirement. So in this circumstance, I was like, no, sorry, you have to stay within a single unit. You don't have the cash for that. Not going to happen. So it's really critical to really be very upfront and intentional with what you're going to do with this property.
And I like that word, intentional. Absolutely. Have those conversations, know it ahead of time, will save you a lot of headaches in the process. So with that, that's just a little bit on the financing side that we wanted to spend the night. Really looking forward. Let's hop in and just we are going to start with talk to us about the mindset, the home buyer ideal mindset.
Mm-hmm. It's we've got to be strong right now. It remains a seller's market very much, and that is it continues to be because primarily that we just don't have a lot of inventory. We're very limited with what's available. The interest rates have gone up, but it's still, if you put things in perspective, with 15 years ago, they're still really, really good. So, right now the sellers kind of have the upper end, but we're starting to see a little bit of a cooling down right now. So we'll see what happens, but there's just a lot of competition. We continue to have multiple offers. So I can't stress enough what you just said and Ben said about just plan ahead as much as you can and get all the pre-approval stuff done before and know exactly what we're looking for, because once you're in an offer process, emotions get really, really heightened. And then we get attached to this house that we see ourselves in it already. And if the dots, are not, the T's are all of that, you just want to get that done before, because there's just a whole lot of process in that 21 days of closing or 30 days that can go all kinds of ways. So I want to, reiterate that. And as I said, the interest rates are on the rise right now. So there's a big push right now, as I'm seeing in the spring, of people trying to get in before we get to I don't know what the crystal ball says it's going to be, but with what's going on with the Fed right now, it's only likely to go up. And then just do your homework on what you really want. As Ben was saying, are you looking remotely for a duplex, or no, you're a single family home kind of person, and just be ready to move quickly. And because the offers come in, you have to be able to negotiate, to answer questions, to make some decisions. Are you going to increase your offer or not? So you just got to be ready to get all that done, and be in that mindset, I would say, to go forward. So, then the next step, once we're good to go, we're pre-approved, ideally, credit score is all good and we're ready to go. We start looking at properties. And I always like to know with my buyer, like, what's the lifestyle you look for? And, what are the must-have and would be nice to have, because there's always a little bit of kind of concession that needs to happen sometimes, or just like, okay, maybe this is not that important. This house would really work for us. So once we do that, I always recommend, I know there's a lot of temptation out there because it's competitive, but I do not recommend ever waiving the home inspection. I think, this could be the worst decision of your life. And then you might discover all kinds of problems. And depending on where you live, in what area of the country, when I was in Virginia Beach, we had termites, that were all over the place. On the West Coast, we see the same thing here. So these are all things that you want to make sure that you do not skip. Because as you go through the process, you will have to get the home inspected. And that is different than the appraisal. These are two different people that come to your house. And depending on the type of loan that you have, if you have the VA loan, then, you will have an appraiser that will come, that's assigned by the VA. They will do their own inspection, and there are certain criteria that sometimes they require certain things to be done. I had that situation happening with termite on a house, and the house had to be treated before the loan would be approved. So there are different things to think about. So talk to your realtor about that so that you kind of know what you're getting into. And then, when you go to look at properties, I always say, pay attention to the neighborhood. Especially if you're not, let's say you're not there. I see that a lot with the military. They rely on us to go and do the walkthrough, share our knowledge of the neighborhood, and, FaceTime with them with our phone the best that we can. And, it's important to look at what does the neighborhood look like, neighbors, how they take care of their home, just look at the overall appearance of the house also, because this will kind of start giving you an immediate, kind of like an overview before you get into the home inspection. Simple things, how's the paint? Is there, is it peeling? Is there dry rot decay, whether on the deck or on the eaves of the roof? We see that a lot. That could be a sign of termite. Look at the foundation. Do you see cracks on there? We see that a lot in California, being in a seismic area. Same thing with the interior. I always say, look at the walls. Let's look at the ceilings. Are there any signs of water damage that might have been kind of painted over or not? Those are all little things to look at. I think that will start kind of giving you an idea. Is this a house that I want to kind of get into and put an offer?
Well, and I think, Jacinta, you hit the nail on the head with the idea that the home inspection and the appraisal are completely different things. One's optional, highly recommended.
Yeah.
The other is required, which is really that
Absolutely.
appraisal to validate that the property as a collateral is worth what you're paying for it, and that the condition of the house warrants it. And again, on what type of, like you said, the loan that you're using can absolutely have an effect on how detailed the expectation that property meets, in essence, minimum property requirements.
Absolutely. And sometimes you're lucky because the listing agent convinced the seller to do the home inspection already. So that way it just speeds up the process. So that way those documents are sometimes available. We can look at them. We know what we're getting into. I still recommend we can still do our own inspection, which I recommend doing. But that way you kind of have an idea of what you're kind of getting into. And it speeds up the process. And also because it is a seller's market, things that are more aesthetic or, people don't tend to negotiate on that. If it's something that's like electrical or dangerous, or again, going back to the good old termite, those are things that are reasonable to negotiate, to have done, or have a credit given to you at closing to do that. But those are, as you said, two very different things that are part of the process.
You mean the sellers today don't want to fix scuffed walls just because there's some marks on them? Come on.
Yeah, exactly. Or some screens that are broken. Yeah, they won't touch those. So they're all different. So So then I get a lot of questions. All right, should I buy a condo? Should I buy a single family home? So I want to kind of walk you through, the pluses and minuses, or like the differences rather between the two of them. They're two great options, and they both gain value. But like the first thing when we start with a condo, I see a lot of first time homeowners, especially if they're, single or they don't have children and they don't necessarily need the backyard for the kids to play and the dog to run or things like that. Condos can be a really, really good option. So a couple of things that I always want to point out, there are some HOA, so that's the home association fees that are recurring every month. In the listing, the realtor can see exactly what those are and what that includes. So I always say, look into it. Sometimes it includes water, it includes sewage, sometimes it includes, maintenance. Usually it's the outside, there's a pool or the outside of your building, like the roof or the exterior, landscaping, things like that. But there's some additional things that are sometimes included also in there. So that's good to know. So that way, when you do your budget and you try to see exactly your fixed costs every month, you can budget that more accurately. Here in California, we also have what's called Melrose fees, which is special tax assessment district, and it varies from one area to the other. Not all of them have it, but it's usually for a certain number of years. I see often like a 20-year period, and that is basically to pay for extra enhancement of the neighborhood. So it could be like lights outside, different things to kind of make the quality of life better. And sometimes if you buy your condo and and you're 10 years into this 20 years, then you will have to pay that extra fee for 10 years. So that's, again, something that your realtor can share with you and then inform you on that. Some of them don't have that, but we see that, I would say a fair amount here, but not everywhere. So that's usually like an annual fee, but it varies from one to the other. The other thing is that the HOA, they have rules, they have a committee, and there are things that you can do and things you cannot do. So it tends to be a little bit more of a uniform looking look, like you can't go out and paint the exterior, whatever color you want, or sometimes work on your car, in the front garage and things like that. What can you do at the inside of your condo? And are you able to knock down walls? Are you able to change the bath or the vanity? So those are all things that vary from one place to the other. So this is something that I always tell people, you've got to consider that if you want to be able to do your weekend, projects and make it look all unique and your own, this might be a better option to do a single family home for you. On the positive,
I'm going to just interrupt for just a second.
Yes.
One of the things that at least I've seen a lot is that you're handed as the client, you're handed a copy of the condo documents that outline all of this stuff. And so many of the times, they're not read. You've seen the condo, you've asked them questions, but they didn't read the actual condo docs. And then they're in the condo and they want to do something and they find they can't. Read the condominium. If you're going to buy a condo, read those condominium docs before you are under contract, no way out, and don't have the opportunity to say, this isn't for me.
Absolutely. And
Julie's had her share of condo cases.
Yes, and they're thick and there's a lot of information and it's very detailed and it could be overwhelming, but it's part of the deal. I think you have to do that. My last client who PCS from Japan and just moved here wanted to change the lock on his door, right? He wanted to put like a system where you have a number. So and that was very important for him. So we went through the 35 pages of the documents and found the paragraph that allowed him to do that. It could be something as specific as when you move in, you have to call it so many days in advance, and then you have to pay a fee for the access to the elevator. And then there's all kinds of little things that you don't think about. And with him, like all of his furniture and things was moving, and he didn't have a specific date when things were arriving. So they were great and they worked with them. They didn't hold him to a specific date. So that was wonderful. And especially when you're in a very military oriented area, they're very flexible with you, but you have to kind of plan. It requires a little bit more planning, I would say, than a single family home. And then, but on the positive side, you have a lot more freedom because you don't have to spend your weekends cutting the grass and watering the plants and then the expenses could be significantly less, like the unexpected, like your roof and some of the major expenses would be probably a little bit easier to kind of budget, I would say. And then from an entry
If I can
point,
add on that
yeah,
real quick.
yes.
The one thing that Michelle said about reading those documents, one of the things you want to look for is there pending lawsuits against the condo, or is there pending special assessment? When you said roof, that was the first thing I thought of. I just recently had
Yeah.
a condo gentleman got hit with a $25,000 special assessment that was only going to be spread out over 4 years because the entire complex needed new roofs and they had not budgeted properly. So it's always not just read the documents, but read the financials on it as well.
Absolutely. Yep. And the other thing is the condominium complex VA certified when we want to deal with a VA loan. That's not all of them that accept that. So there are specific rules and percentage of how many units can be rented or not. They've got, different criteria there, but that is important to look at as well if we're going with the VA loan. Again, your realtor can tell you that when we go on the MLS, all that information is there. So that's easy to quickly identify that. Sometimes some don't say that and they haven't yet kind of been registered, or so it's worth asking your loan officer to double check if it doesn't say it in the MLS, because I've had a situation like that before where they were, but it wasn't listed.
Yeah, and that's a
and
good
then,
point out too, Jacinth, because your loan officers have the ability through the VA portal, in essence, to go and look to see whether condominiums are approved or not. In fact, where it's located on the VA site, anybody can go look at that, and that's important. Ben, did you have something?
Well, one thing I like is that we have a whole team so that if that had previously been accepted, maybe expired, we have people that can help like get that condo up and running. I'll spare you guys my feelings on condos because I'm not a fan. too much stuff to deal with. I'm not, if you can get 4 walls, I mean, if you love a gym and your yard getting done, well, just, I don't know, find a bar outside to pull up on and no. Yeah, not my favorite thing. That's just me.
Yes.
Ben is not buying a condo.
Not buying a condo. I mean, it is, for a lot of people, it's a lower entry point, it's a way to start owning something. So that's often what we see there. So on the single family home, though, that's what Ben would prefer. You have a lot more freedom. I would say there. You have a lot more freedom to do what you want. You still have some civic leagues, though, that you want to pay attention to because some are more active than others. Again, as far as like monitoring if you've cut your grass or not and things like that. But overall, you have more freedom there. And then it's typically the people that want to be able to make it their own. They love to do their own project. They want to be able to make it look their own style and paint it whatever color that they want and things like that. So I would say, this is definitely for the people that love spending their weekends at Home Depot, and then and then they just want to have more freedom, I would say. Sometimes the price tag is depending on the market, it is typically higher than the condo, and it tends to appreciate at a higher rate historically also. You don't have the HOA there. So when you do your PITI and then you're trying to figure out how much am I going to have to budget every month for my house, it's easy to forget about the HOA. So let's not forget about that because it will be there every month, but for the house, you don't have that, but you have other kind of expenses that are a little harder to plan and budget, but quarterly, termite, inspection, or spraying the house, making sure that there's no moisture issues, the regular kind of maintenance that you have to do as a homeowner are things that, after a year, you'll be able to have a clear understanding of how much this will cost on a recurring basis. But these are kind of like the replacement of the HOA, I call it sometimes. So those are things to think about, when you're planning your budget and you're looking at, if you want to go in that direction or not.
What I like about that too, Jacinth, because you are absolutely spot on. You've got pros and cons either way. It's figuring out which one best fits your lifestyle and how that property is going to be used. And you bring up a good point from the qualifying aspect and that planning purposes is that loan amount may be lower on a condo. That entry point may be lower, but you might find that monthly payment is very similar to what that loan amount is on a single family as soon as you add those condo dues.
Mhm.
Or if you've got, if you've got that small homeowner association dues where you've got a common pool or a golf course or whatever common areas that you're paying for, that becomes a debt that is considered in your debt to income ratios as well. So it's good to, again, know all of the facts and details as you're making some of those determinations.
Absolutely. And the whole fees increase, they're not fixed. So they will increase, from one year to the other. And the other thing that a lot of people ask me about is like, am I going to be able to rent, my condo? So what if I'm here for 2 years and then, or I will be going away for 2 months? Am I going to be able to do a short-term rental with it, or 31 days or longer? So that again is in your condo association documents. Even when you buy a single family home, we're seeing a lot more restrictions now on the permits that the cities are willing to issue for short-term rental. So these are all things to think about. And I always tell people, do not plan your budget on guarantee of being able to do short-term rental, because these change all the time. They change all the time. I mean, they're not liked by most people that live in neighborhoods. So this is something nice to have possibly, but don't budget on that. So, and then, so when you're ready to make that purchase, you've done your homework, then I always recommend talk to a couple of realtors. I mean, if you have one that you've been working with forever and you love, that's awesome. But you should interview us. You should ask us, how do you go about, working? What kind of communication style do you have? Are you going to keep me abreast of what's going on? The frequency are we going to be talking about? So I think that's important. And you've got to be able to relate to that person, because again, it's an emotional process. You go through ups and downs, and you've got to be able to trust that person. I always, rather over communicate, but my job is to take care of the headaches, for them, and then make this as smooth as possible. But there needs to be some communication going on a regular basis. And then once you have your partner in crime, then start with the neighborhood that you want to be in. Again, I always ask, what kind of lifestyle do you have? Do you want to be able to walk everywhere? Do you want to be close to public transportation because you have teenagers that don't have a car yet? School districts. Do you have children? What kind of commute to work? Here in San Diego, we definitely have a traffic pattern that if you live south and you move up north, you'll be stuck in traffic. If you live north, you go to, it's like you want to take that into consideration, because are you going to have a 30-minute commute, or are you going to have an hour commute? Those are things that are important. Is it walkability? It's central location, all super important, because these kind of eat up at you, after a year or two, these little things. Once you've kind of established that with your realtor, then we get into the property per se. And that's where your must have and nice to have comes in super handy. So, look at the layout of the house. Are you people that entertain all the time? Do you want to have the open concept that opens up to the back porch? Do you have 3 kids and everybody wants their own bedroom, and now you work from home? So how many rooms do you really need? Those are all things that are super important. And then again, just be flexible in your mindset, because the absolute perfect house may not be out there, but sometimes small little modification can be done. You take down a wall or not, or fresh coat of paint goes a long way. So I just say, keep an open mind when you get into the property, and then if it meets about the majority of your criteria, this is something worth then looking into and putting an offer in.
Then that's the fun part, right? These days, talk to us about the offers.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So what's the strategy, right, to get there? So we talked about, you have to be pre-approved. When you put in the offer, I have to present the letter that says that my buyer is pre-approved by their financial institution. Another thing to consider, we have to put an earnest money deposit that shows good faith that you will be, performing. And this is part of your payment, basically, on the property. Here, at least in San Diego, it's usually between 1% and 3%, but closer to 3%, to be frank. You want to look really strong, because the market out there's a lot of cash offer still, especially when you get with the condos that are a little bit, more affordable. When you get into $3-4 million home, then it's not so much the case, but you want to be able to look as good as possible if you come in with a loan, so that you can compete with those people. So the earnest money deposit is a thing that a lot of listing agent and sellers look at. And then also, clearly your offer, you want to be competitive. I mean, there's no major deals going on right now. There's very little that sells on the listing price overall. So you want to ask your realtor to develop a competitive market analysis. So we call it CMA. And it's very simple. We look at what has sold in that market that is similar over the past probably 3 months, I would say, is pretty, because the market moves so fast right now, so that we come up with an offer that is competitive, but that you can also afford. So we got to have both, they go hand in hand. Then how quickly you can close your escrow is also another thing that will make you look good. Every situation is different. Some sellers have to move immediately. Some want to rent back from you. So a lot of time they will ask for a free rent back. Are you willing to do that for 30 days? Depends from one person to the other. So again, this is like the mindset I was talking about at the beginning. Be prepared to know what you're willing to concede or not. So that way, when you ask that question, you can make a decision quickly. Because if the houses get on the market usually Wednesday, and if there's an open house on the weekend, often by Monday, we're reviewing all the offers. So it slowed down a little bit, but that's kind of what it is still. So you want to be able to say, yes, you can do, or you put it in your offer. I'm going to give you this. I'm going to do a 30-day rent back. And that's my job, to talk with the listing agent to try to get as much information as I can, as far as what the seller is looking for. And I spend a lot of time building the relationship with the listing agent the best I can, because some don't want to talk to us. Some are very chatty, some are very nice, and some are not. So that's the reality. So my job is to try to get through them and then at least get our name on this so that they recognize it. And then I can ask the question. Sometimes they're at the open house and I can say, listen, what's important for the seller? And they'll say, yeah, they would really like a rent back, okay. And they may share that information with everybody, but some people don't ask. They just write the offer and they send it out. So just spend a little bit of extra time with your realtor. And it's my job, again, to get all that intel so that I can craft the offer and make it as, exciting as possible. And we've had success. I've had success sometimes beating offers that were higher, because we did offer the rent back, because I responded super quickly, which is like 3 hours after the open house. Offer was in already, it beat all the other ones. So you're top of mind, especially if you come in with a strong offer. They're like, oh my God, I just met them. They look so nice. I met them at the open house. They're X% over my listing price. They already sent the offer and they're willing to do a rent back. Then you stick in their mind. So those are all little nuances that I would say that can make a difference. So those are some of the success, tools that I've been using to be able to get that through. And, if your offer is not accepted, you move right along. Sometimes you can be a backup offer. And that's happened to me many times where, many times it falls through escrow for various reasons. So don't hope for it. But if it comes back, again, you have to be quick and you have to be able to make a decision if you want to pursue with them or not.
And I like just especially the second to the bottom that says, it gets emotional. So try not, it's hard, but try not to get attached. It is very easy to get, whether it's a second home or an investment or your primary, it's very easy to get caught up in that Vegas mentality of chasing something that when you get it, you're like, oh crap, what have I done? Because you got caught up in that moment. So
and then that's called buyer's remorse. Sometimes people go through that and they're like, oh my God, my offer was accepted. I probably offered too much money. So no, if we've done a really good competitive market analysis, we know what this house should go for. And then again, as you were talking about, just be mindful that if you offer, let's say $500,000 on a house, and the comps show that most of the stuff sold for $450,000, well, then you have to be prepared. Maybe the appraisal is going to come back at $450,000. Do you have that extra $50,000 to bring in at closing? So those are all things to think about. So this is like in a bit of a nutshell. I have a home buyer's guide that I offer for free here. I welcome everybody to download it. It gives you really, really good information on how to prepare, and I'm available to answer any questions anytime. So thank you so much for having me.
As always, great information. So appreciate it. So we're going to go under the impression or the thought process that we've got our financing in line. We've now found the house. Jacinth won us the offer, and we are ready to start talking about how this closing is going to happen, especially if I happen to have to not be present, and I need that power of attorney. So Julie, I'm going to hand this off to you now.
Thank you, Michelle. That was a great presentation. I appreciate all the information you presented. So when you are ready to buy and you've got your contract, or you're looking to get your contract, and you know you may be underway, you may be available for a certain period of time, there are powers of attorney, and there's different ones that are needed. For buying or for selling, it's usually required that you have a specific power of attorney. On certain circumstances, you could get away with a general durable power of attorney so long as it has the language in it needed. And those are more flexible on the seller side than on the buyer side. The one thing you have to have when you do a power of attorney, if you are getting a loan, I don't get to say that's a good power of attorney or not. The lender has to review it. Everybody gets to look at it to make sure it contains the things that are needed. So when do you want to make sure you have it, and how do you use it, and what do you need to do? So if you want to flip to the next one. So there's 3 different types. The general durable, which covers everything that you can do yourself. You're giving somebody else power to act like you. They stand in your shoes. They can do everything you can do. They can give your money away. They can do whatever is necessary to take care of you financially. And in some cases, the general durable will even have some medical part. But that's a different type of power of attorney that kind of goes to estate planning. So we leave that to a different day. So the power of attorney gives that person that you're granting, your person that you trust to do everything that you can do, they have all power. They literally are you. They have the ability to do anything with that power of attorney, good, bad, and indifferent. And you're bound by those powers of attorney. Whatever they sign, you've given them permission to do so. So absolute power of attorney is kind of a scary thing to do. And in Virginia, it's governed by statutes that say all those things. What the principal tells the person that's going to be the power of attorney or their agent, what they can and can't do. So in general, it's pretty much everything. When you have a general durable power of attorney and you have to use it for real estate for whatever reason, it ends up getting recorded, which creates a whole nother problem. Because once it's recorded, you have to record a revocation if you ever want to take that away. So at all costs, try not to let anybody record your general durable power of attorney, because it puts a whole nother level of what happens when the power of attorney is misused. So you want to treat that with kid gloves. The general durable, I always tell people, if you get this as part of your estate planning, don't give it to the person that's your principal with your agent. Let them know where it's at in the event that it's needed, but hold on to the original. Don't hand out lots and lots of copies. Only use one original and have it in your control until such time, let's say you're going on vacation, and then you need to have that person have it. But when you come back and you're able to do all of things yourself, get that power of attorney back in your physical control. But for purposes of real estate, we're going to go on to the types of.
One quick question, Julie, because one of the things that we see a lot, especially in the military, right, is your spouse, you're the service member, you're getting ready to deploy, you go by the military legal and you get your general power of attorney, which then doesn't let you really feel like you can do anything. So is a general power of attorney different than this general durable power of attorney?
Well, those go to expiration dates. General durable is only, it may have a 1 year or 2 year or 5 year expiration date, but it also survives your disability. So if for some reason you get the power of attorney because you know you're going to have surgery or you're going to be unavailable when you get hurt, if you are incapacitated in any way, mentally, physically, or whatever, a durable power of attorney survives that disability. Now on your death, a power of attorney ceases to exist. It doesn't survive death, but it does survive your incapacity for whatever reason, whether it's physical, mental, or just not being located. So just a general power of attorney sometimes has restrictions on time and sometimes has restrictions on capacity. So if you're incapacitated, you have to always look to the language in the power of attorney itself and it will explain what that person, what powers they have. Sometimes they're limited, but on a general durable, they're pretty much, you are acting as that person and do anything that they can do.
Okay, and then, but in most situations, across the board, you can't use a general power of attorney when you're talking real estate. That
Correct.
gets us to, then there needs to be,
In some circumstances, that general durable power of attorney, it has highlighted areas on what you're allowed to do. If it does specifically say, let's say you're the seller, sometimes it will say, I own property at 123 Main Street and my agent has the authority to sell, refinance. If that language is in there, that makes a portion of the general durable a specific power of attorney. But again, it's very rare that they will stand in the same shoes. You have to look to the language in the power of attorney itself. And then, so for a specific sale of property, it is driven just to the house that you're selling. That usually has a time frame. It usually says, at that point, you may or may not have a contract on it, but sometimes it will say, I authorize my agent to sell this specific property up to a certain price. That way they can't go out there and just give it away under a deed of gift or sell it very undervalued. So you want that specific power of attorney to kind of rein in what your agent can do with it. And the one thing with the sale power of attorney is that you want to make sure that if the house has already gone on the market, that the specific power of attorney allows the agent to sign the contracts. It allows, they have parameters, but you want to be very specific on what they're allowed to do. Sometimes it will say they can't sign the contract and that the principal has to sign it in order to agree to the contract. And then the agent is only signing from contract forward to sale. So it always goes to the language in the power of attorney itself. And you want it to be as specific as possible, specifically making sure that you're getting the money out of that house that you want. And it gives the agent permission to talk to your bank to get your payoff. It gives your agent permission to agree with the real estate agent about repairs. You don't know until you get that home inspection that Seth was talking about, that maybe you have $10,000 worth of repairs. So you want that power of attorney to say, yes, I have the authority to do all things necessary to complete the contract. And if the contract calls for repairs, then you want that to do. You also want to make sure that if it has an expiration date on it, your contract doesn't expire before the power of attorney does. So you want to make sure that I usually do 90 days or sometimes the end of the year, just depending on where we are. If it's just getting listed, I'll put that out a little longer, maybe 6 months. If there's already a contract with a 30-day closing date on it, I'll usually make it a 90-day because sometimes there's things after closing that need to be cleaned up. So we want them to be able to still sign stuff after the fact in order to make sure the contract's complied with. So then with the purchase real estate, it's everything with the seller side, except it's a lot more. For one, you have to make sure the lender will approve it. So we will draft it. And if we know that the buyer is going to be using a VA loan, there's very specific language that has to be in it, saying that the service member agrees that it's a VA loan, that they'll be utilizing their benefits. It will usually require that the interest rate be in there, or that the interest rate be no higher than X, and that the purchase loan amount not be higher than this. And some lenders have other very specific requirements. So we want to make sure that we have enough time for not only you to get it signed, but also for it to get reviewed by the lender. We want to make sure the lender doesn't come back and say, I don't like the signature. I don't like the language. We need to make sure this is tweaked a little bit. So you want to give yourself, if you know you're getting underway or you're getting deployed, to make sure that that power of attorney has all the checks and everybody that needs to approve it has approved it. The powers of attorney are always recorded if it's being used on a document that's recorded. So if it's being used to sign a deed, then the power of attorney has to get recorded. If it's being used to sign the mortgage or the deed of trust, the power of attorney has to get recorded. So not only does it have to get the lender's approval, it now has to get the clerk of court's approval. So one of the big problems we have when we do powers of attorney is we email them to people with very specific instructions. Do not change my formatting, do not change the borders, do not print front and back. 99% of the times they're going to do at least one of those. I got a power of attorney back yesterday, front and back. And what happens is the seal bleeds through to the front, you can't read it. And now it's not a recordable document. So we end up having to resend it out, say, please, best case scenario, we send a UPS to them already printed, so they can't mess it up. But worst case scenario, they're on base, they anticipated being here and can't get back. Just this week I was telling Michelle, was for a seller side. He has PCS orders to Florida, selling the house. IT is his rate, and had no anticipation of going anywhere. Got called up to an emergency drill. He's like, I'm IT, what do I do in the middle of the field? Well, he had exactly 3 hours to go home and pack and tell his wife that he didn't know how they were going to sell the house. But he was only going to be gone for 5 days. Here we are 10 days later, he's still gone. We were able to get the power of attorney to him. He was able to get permission to leave the base long enough to go find a notary in a UPS store. And we did get it back in time and they were able to close, but it was one of those, he was never going to get deployed. Don't ever say never. If you know you're active duty military, get the power of attorney. It's better to have it than not need it, than need it, not have it. Just today, I had another one, similar situation, active duty, still underway. And then the power of attorney, everything is signed, and lo and behold, the lenders are requiring an alive and well, which, they closed today, and they're like, try to find an alive and well today. The wife is on the road driving to Florida. Finally, I got a hold of her. She said she's going to pull over and print it off and find a notary and get it back. But it's a lot of scrambling at the last minute if you don't think about it up front.
That's an important feature on our end, is that alive and well that you need to plan and line up for, to know who needs to be emailed. That person knows to be looking for the email from the lender. Hey, is this person alive and well? Is everything good? It's got to come from a military email address. Typically, no one's using your Gmail, stuff like that. So there's always just discuss these things as early as possible with your lender in the beginning of the process. If there's any chance you're going to need a specific POA, we want to make sure we get that lined up for you guys. So just, again, front side convo, all the work hard up front, it'll get it done in the end.
Absolutely. So some of the cautions for having a power of attorney, we've talked a lot about them already, is to make sure that they're recordable, they're properly signed. If you're overseas, that adds in a whole nother layer, because if you don't have a JAG officer available, you have to find an embassy. And have to be able to get to the embassy, and you have to be able to make sure that what the embassy writes is in English, or you have a certified translation. I had one come back from Abu Dhabi, I believe, and they come with a little ribbon on it, and then which makes it difficult to record. And that was just, there's just always cautions when you have a power of attorney, and it does add extra layers, which add to the stress of buying. And we don't want you to be stressed while you're buying or selling. We want to be able to make it as seamless as possible. But again, it's, as Vicente and Michelle and Ben have said, have those conversations at the beginning, not the day of closing. I had one just came back from Africa. It took 10 days to get here with a UPS overnight, because it really isn't an overnight. And he kind of cheated that way. He found somebody who was coming back to the States, and they dropped it at a UPS in Florida. So it's really something that you need to make sure that you have somebody that can notarize it for you. You have some way to get it back to your lender, back to your settlement company, back to your agent, back to your spouse, or whoever's acting on your behalf. And then lastly, a lot of lenders will not allow somebody to be the power of attorney that's actually part of the transaction. So your real estate agent cannot be your power of attorney in most cases. Your settlement agent cannot be your power of attorney. So it's going to be a friend, a family member, an acquaintance of some time. And it's got to be somebody you trust. This is actually a true story here. I trust my daughter explicitly. She's going to be my only one to inherit. There was no spouse. There were no other children. And this gentleman was elderly, and he did his power of attorney and gave it to her. And she immediately went and mortgaged out the paid off house that he'd lived there for 6 years and never made a mortgage payment, and didn't know anything about it till they started knocking on the door for foreclosure. It was a very, very sad thing to have to deal with for this gentleman who was service injured in a wheelchair, and as he was, going towards the end of his life, he had to make the decision that he's either going to lose his house or his daughter, and he was able to get the attorneys to fix it. After a long time, he pulled his money out, paid off the mortgage, and just kept his daughter by her side. And his whole thought was she was going to get it anyway. She just got it before I died. But it was a very, very difficult conversation. So make sure, like I said at the beginning, if you have a durable power of attorney, you hold that thing in your hand. Don't give it to anybody, even if it's your daughter, your spouse. Make sure you have control over it if you have.
Well, and one of the things, Julie, about powers of attorney is we think of them because in our world, they happen all the time. And you hear individuals, this is just a pain. This is a pain. It is there to protect you. You are giving somebody the right to be you. You've got to think through that and understand that the hoops that you're having to jump through are there to protect you, not there to keep you from doing something, but to make you think about it and to protect you. I think that that's huge in conversations that need to be had early in the process.
Absolutely. Well, like I say, everything can be fixed, and just start early and keep everybody in communication. And thank you so much for letting me speak, and thank you for your service to the SEAL team community.
Thank you. I think I've got so many questions. I think I know all this stuff, and then I get to sit here and listen and talk to you guys, and it's like, oh, I did not know that, or oh, I need to think about that in a little bit of a different way. So, Julie, as always, we are so appreciative when guests take their time to come and join us, share their wisdom, and be available for those questions as they come up. One of the things that we've talked about going through all of this from day one, and you will hear it from us every single month, anytime that you talk to us, that if you are failing to plan, if you are not doing, for my military community out there, we do workups, you do drills, you practice, you research to do all of this to go do your job, or when you were active to go do your job. We are saying put that same process and thought mentality into your financial world, right? Your everyday financial world. So if you are failing to plan, you are making decisions to potentially planning to fail. So just thinking through that. Any last thoughts, Ben, on the conversation today?
Just well said, both of you guys. I mean, I really appreciate everything you brought forward for us. Jacinta, it was interesting to hear you say some terms differently because you're on that coast than we do here. I'm going to do my hardest to bring HOA to Hampton Roads. It's always HOA here. No, really cool. And Julie, good insight into the other types. I mean, I only deal with the one kind that we need and try and guide people through, who you've always been phenomenal for in getting that together. Very appreciative of all of that. And I don't know. Yeah, I just appreciate you both being here and being a good resource for all of this. Really good info. So
perfect. Well, guys, if you do have questions, and I'm assuming someone would have let me know if we had any questions in the chat, since I don't see that on my end. But if you do have questions, our information, how to reach us is right here. For those that are watching this, just pause quickly and grab that information. If you want to download that purchase guide that Jacinta has for you, just quickly take a look at that screen again and snag that link. And with that, again, thank you everybody for your service and sacrifice for our spouses, for our service members and our veterans. We are so honored to be here and hopefully adding some value and some knowledge. And with that, Gary, I'm going to hand this back to you to take us home.
Thank you, everybody. There's really not much more I can say other than I really wish I would have been around, heard this like 40 years ago. So again, thank you, everybody. Stay tuned. And that's all from here. Thank you so much. Thank you,
Until next
everybody.
time.
Yep. Take care.
Thank you.